Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining in and watching us today. I have Fiona Gibson with us, and I'm also excited to say Carly Lane's joining me. So, Carly's one of Global Girls Online Book Club associated authors. Fiona is an author of 16 rom-com novels and lives in Glasgow, Scotland, with her husband and their collie cross Jack. She has three grown-up children and also writes for magazines and newspapers. She started her writing career on the iconic UK teen magazine Jackie and went on to edit Just 17 and more magazines. When she's not writing, Fiona loves to draw, paint, and run. And her latest novel is The Dog Share. So just sharing my copy, and I've been reading The Dog Share and I have to say really, really loved it. And it is your first book I've read and really wants me to read more of your books. And just, I'm a dog lover myself. I've got three dogs, so really enjoyed that as well. And really found with people, I know a lot of us are in lockdown at the moment, so really, really recommend checking out Fiona's books if you want to have something that takes you away from your current life. I really, really enjoyed it. And want to also mention Carly. Her latest novel, Take Me Home, is set in Scotland. So a really good chance for us to talk a bit more about Scotland as well with Fiona. So thanks, Fiona and Carly, for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jackie. Thanks, Carly. Hi.
Just wondered, Fiona, if you wanted to start off by telling us a little bit about The Dog Share.
Yes. Now this was a lockdown book. It was kind of started just before, but it kind of, as lockdown hit the UK, people got obsessed with dogs. So it felt like the right idea to kind of run with. I'm quite obsessed with our dog. We've had him for 10 years. And I'd written a dog book years ago, but it was so buried in the past. I thought I really want a book where the dog brings people together. So it started with that, really. My books tend to start with a little theme, whether it's being an empty nester, like when our kids moved out, or a sort of mother's desire to run away from the family responsibilities, or there's always a kind of theme, and then I decide how I'm going to build a story around that. So it started with a dog. I thought, actually, before the story ended up being what it is, we joined a dog borrowing website where people can borrow your dog. It's called borrowmydoggy.com. And we got to know some really nice people through it locally in Glasgow. It was a way of getting to know some people and getting Jack, our dog, some extra walks, because he's very, very active. And we kind of got to know people, and there was a little circle of people around our dog. So I thought that's quite a good device for a book. That was my original idea, that they would be borrowers of the same dog through a website. But I ended up making Scout a stray dog. You know, you start with an idea and then it just kind of meanders off, and you know what it's like, Carly. The original idea in your little synopsis, you know, the end result bears kind of nothing. You know, no resemblance really.
Once the characters decide what they're going to do, they seem to take over, don't they?
Yeah. So that's how it started, really, kind of based on our dog and how he brings people together and the way people kind of relate to a dog, and why people have that connection with a dog.
And it's a concept like I've never really even heard of. It was, a really interesting concept.
Yeah, I thought it worked really well. I loved it. I loved that it brought different people together in different situations. I think animals do that in general, don't they? That's why they're so great for our therapies and things like that. They tend to be something that brings everything out. It's lovely.
Definitely.
And I've got I've got Callie who's watching saying that she really loves the type of storyline, and she works in the pet industry, and she loves how many times pets are the basis for a new relationship.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a dog, I'm sure you know, Jackie, you take your dog out and you know all the dog's names, but you don't know the human names.
Exactly.
You have all these conversations and even friendships with people, that you see maybe even daily, because the dogs kind of bring people together, don't they? But you don't know the human names,
Yeah.
And it goes on so long and you feel like I can't actually ask what your name is, because you've been saying hello for a year,
Yeah, a bit awkward.
Yeah.
Well, I found your books. I think it was just after we got back from Scotland, actually, because I know I was just still addicted to Scotland and I still wanted it. And so I was looking for books that sort of had some kind of Scottish theme. And I think that must be how I stumbled on yours. And it was just lovely. They just make me laugh so much, your titles of your books. They're just so relevant for so many people. Alcohol and mothers and kids and empty nests. It just seems to be what I'm going through at the moment. So I think they're great. I love the titles.
And,
thank you.
And that's how I first heard about you as well. Fiona was through Carly. I think I saw on one of her Facebook feeds or something saying about you as an author, and I hadn't heard about you before, and then thought, oh, sounds good, I'll have to have a look. And also, I forgot to mention at the start as well to people might remember that earlier this year you were actually our author for the day, which was really, really great, and you shared a bit of your drawing. I'm really interested in your drawing and the amazing talent you have with that as well.
Oh, thank you. It's a bit of I think it's work avoidance. It's a bit of another outlet that doesn't involve staring at screen, and battling with plot lines and words and that kind of thing. It's like it's a really nice contrast. So I find it really helps me to kind of balance a little bit,
Do you find you use it to think about the book sometimes, or is it just more to get away from it?
It's more to get away from it, but I always have a plan. I will start a book in a more organised way. I tend to write a synopsis and then just dive right in way too early, and it's quite a chaotic process. So I have an idea of having a big mood board, and I would draw the characters and sketch things out. I think I've just not really had the kind of physical space to do that. And in lockdown, at one point, we had 5 of us we live in a flat. So there were 5 of us here. I've ended up kind of in corners to work. I'm now working in the bedroom. So my ideal is to have this beautiful big board and I could literally sketch out my characters. I don't know if it would help, but I think I do have an idea visually of what they're like. And
that would be awesome, actually. I find, I can't draw, mine would all be looking like stick people, but I find that really hard because when it comes to either the covers or, like you're saying, a mood board, it would be so awesome to have what you see in your head on a piece of paper. Yeah. Oh.
So I think I'm going to try and make a space, and I'm actually about to start writing a new one, and I've ended up having to do quite a lot of editing on my last couple. And this time I kind of want to go in with a much, much clearer idea. So this is, each time I try and reinvent the way I write a book. I think I'm going to hit on the perfect method, and I still haven't.
I know, and I still keep buying all these books that promise you this is the way to write, and I still don't do any of it. I know, yeah. That's nice to know there's other people like that.
I do the same with art materials. I think if I have these amazing pastels or these amazing watercolours, they will make my art so much better.
Have you ever thought of Have you ever thought of doing a book with your illustrations in them?
No, I haven't. I would love to do something visual. I'd really, really like to, but I think it would be a bit of a personal project. I love books about cities. Like one of my favourite cities is Paris, and I've got a couple of books of beautiful just illustrated books. They've just got watercolours of little, macaroon shops and delis and markets, books like that. I just drool over them. So I kind of like to do something one day, but it's a bit of a dream project, a little side project maybe, or the sort of interesting shops of Glasgow or something like that. I love drawing shop fronts because they're flat on. I draw them with no perspective at all, just straight on, quite basic.
Yeah, I've seen some of your drawings. They're not basic, they're beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I feel I've got a lot to learn, actually. I do. But it has been a nice outlet, and it's something that happened really when our kids grew up, and I just got a bit more headspace. I could do a bit more art, which I'd always done, but very, it got pushed aside in the kind of young family years. As most things do.
I'm hearing you. Yeah. Well, I've still got one at home, but I've got 3 adult kids now. So, it's interesting, isn't it, that you go through all these. And I find that too with some of my writing. My characters are getting more mature. And, so it's interesting, isn't it, how you sort of, it comes, I think, with, I guess, life experience. That's what you need to write, I think. You need to have a bit of life experience.
I think so. And my first book, which there is a slightly different style. I don't think I hadn't really found my voice at all. And that was about 18 years ago, and it was about the baby stage. And now I don't think I could wrap my head around that now. Because I think when you move through the stages, you've no interest really in the baby stage or the toddler stage once you've hauled yourself through it. You're
still recovering.
You are, and you blank it out, actually. It's like, you're so in the here and now, and I don't, it's not that I don't have interest, because I think there's lots of potential for humour with babies and toddlers, but I feel I kind of mind that very much in my early books, and I actually can't really remember either. I think I'm so exhausted. The real detail that would make it funny, I can't really remember what it's like being five times.
You try and block it out after a few years have passed.
Still traumatic.
Yeah.
I much prefer writing about teenagers. I think there's loads of potential for humour, obviously, because it's such a tricky stage, and young adult kids as well.
And then
just as dependent
next it will
babies.
be and then next will it be the grandchildren coming along?
Well, one day that would be great. I mean, I've got lots of friends that are grandparents actually, and I'm sure there'd be loads to write about there.
And we've got lots of people watching, which is really great, and a few questions coming through from some people. Jill's wondering if you've always wanted to be an author, and I'm wondering a bit like at what point you decided that, right, I'm going to try and write my first novel.
I'd always wanted, as a teenager, I actually wanted to go to art school, but I didn't get in. But I also was obsessed with magazines, so I worked on magazines, as you mentioned. And then in the back of my mind, all through my 20s, I thought, I should write a book. I'd love to write a book. I wrote lots and lots of short stories. I've always loved fiction. But it wasn't until I had 3 kids that I actually sat down and wrote my book. And I think it's because life was so... I'd come out of working full time. I'd gone freelance, so I had that flexibility. But I also had 3 kids, all under school age, so 3 under 5. But I think it was that determination to do something for myself and have a project. And I was kind of up at night with kids, or, sort of sleep deprived, and I'd sort of batter away at bits of it as I could. So that's when I wrote my first book. So my daughter would have been about 1, I think, and my twin boys would have been about 3 or 4 when I wrote that first one. So it was when I was out of the workplace, although I was still kind of doing a bit of part-time writing for magazines. I kind of had that headspace in a weird way, even though the family was so young.
So had you always been writing though, because you had been involved with magazines for such a long time? Yeah,
I'd always written features and sort of teenage lifestyle type features on teen mags and then women's mags, and lots of short stories. But I'd never written anything longer than about 2,000 words ever. And then suddenly here's a book and it's 100,000 words, and you sort of think, how on earth do you write something that long, But it just came through. And having kids suddenly gave me a big pile of material for plots, for plot ideas. And suddenly I wanted to write about being a mum. So the whole parenting thing, that mumlet type area, it just felt right, I just felt driven. I don't think I ever had an idea that was good enough before that. And it's funny, you think when you have kids, you'll have no time. But I had reams of time. before I was a parent, and I never wrote a book then. So
it's weird, isn't
it? As well, you know, to make something happen.
Yeah. Well, I was the same, and I think that was my most productive time. I'm a full-time writer now, and I'm sure I don't have the same kind of, you know, output that I had when you only had 10 minutes to write here and there, sort of thing. It's very strange, isn't it? But I love that you write. I think it's so popular, like you said, because you wrote sort of over a range of different stages, I guess. I think you just appeal to so many different people in that same situation as mums, and we go through all the things with different stages with kids. I love it. I think you write awesome books, and they're so relevant and they're so funny. they're just great for, especially now at this time when people are in lockdown and they're sort of, you know, you need something like that, I think, to lift your spirits a bit.
I think you're really kind. Thank you. I think rom-coms, I went through a phase worrying, like, had they sort of had their day and it was all moving towards thrillers and kind of, you know, psychological suspense and stuff, which I love. I read tons of those kind of books. And I thought rom-coms are a little bit old-fashioned, but actually in the last couple of years, I think because life has been quite grim, there's been a bit of a surge again. You know, people are actually enjoying books that are quite happy and light and uplifting again. And I have got in the back of my mind, I'd like to try other types of writing, but I always come back to wanting to put jokes in. You know, I just do. It just, you know, you sort of think, oh, can I write another rom-com, or have I used all my jokes? But then there's always a whole new slant on something, isn't there? There's always, you know, there's always a little spark that triggers a new idea. You know, it just something that comes up in a conversation, you know, and then that urge starts again. So, yeah. So, no, I'm really glad you enjoy them, and they do seem like my kind of natural thing.
I think you've got to do. Yeah, write what's natural. Well, like you said, if you're putting humor in, that's not a bad thing. You could write a murder. You could write a murder one with jokes. That would be really cool. It could be a whole new genre. I'd buy that.
And I think at the start I said you've written about 16 novels. Are they all standalone, or do you have any characters who are in more than one?
I wrote a series of 3 under a different name, Ellen Berry, and that was set in a Yorkshire village, and they have got characters that kind of weave in. So they ended up, I did find it, to be honest, quite a challenge writing 2 books a year, because I was writing one of my Fiona Gibson books and an Ellen Berry. I just thought, oh, I can up the pace here. But actually 2 books a year is a bit of a stretch for me. It's too much. I don't know how you find it, Carly, how many you write.
I'm currently doing 2, but I mean, there are, only because I seem to always have been a couple of books ahead until this year, where I got really slack, and now suddenly it's like only, you know, I'm writing to a time, like a deadline, and I don't really enjoy that as much. So
do you find that that's too quick for you, really?
I don't like being I like to have things done and set aside. I don't like that pressure, and I think it does affect your writing if you're not used to that. I've been a little bit stressed, been drinking a little bit of gin more than normal. Yes, been down to the horses to get some horse therapy a lot often, but well, I think we're back on track a little bit, but it's definitely it definitely does affect you if you need that space. I think I do anyway. I don't.
Yeah, I think it's whatever you can do to enjoy the process, and if you're feeling happy and positive and enjoying it, it definitely comes through in the writing. And when I've been really under the cosh and really chasing a deadline, I have to do so much more editing when it comes back to me from my editor. Because it just does show in the writing. I've got more time now, so I dropped back to 1 a year again, because you know, if you're writing 2 books a year, I reckon 2 months of each book is editing, isn't it? So you're actually writing a book in 4 months, and I can't do that. I can, but it really suffers. And yes,
it's not pleasant.
Go right up.
Yes. Well, the gin companies are really happy.
Yeah. I think when you're under pressure, you actually get to a point when you actually can't really write. Actually, I think you have to be quite relaxed and in the mood, don't you? I don't mean that you sit around waiting for inspiration to strike you, but the conditions have to be kind of conducive.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No, I don't even know what mine was. I was really ahead before we went to Scotland. I'm going to blame Scotland. I wanted these books out of the way. And then when I got back, I was just so wrapped up in just, post-holiday and everything. And then COVID hit, and I'm going to blame it too. But it just did. It really messed me around. So I think, I understand what you're saying. You do need to be in that mindset. I think we're getting back in there.
I think with COVID, so I finished this one off. This was probably 2/3 done in first lockdown, and then I've written another one since, which is now just on its final edits. So that really was the lockdown book, and it got done, and it's fine. It's quite a simple, straightforward book, actually, very linear, one voice, one point of view. And I think I chose that because I was finding it actually hard to focus. And my editor said, a lot of her authors, we weren't stimulated, we weren't going out, we couldn't work in coffee shops or libraries, we weren't meeting people, we weren't getting all that stuff feeding us and our imaginations. We were really hemmed in. And it's really hard to write sparky prose, I think, when all you do is walk around with the dog, around the block. You don't see anybody. You know what it's like if you go on a holiday, you kind of feel so inspired and shaken up, and you want to get all your new ideas down. And I think lockdown was really, there was a lot of stuff to read, wasn't there? Like, write that novel in lockdown because you'll have so much time.
Buy that dog.
But it was it was actually hard to write that novel in lockdown, actually.
No, it was not very good for it, I don't think. It was good for reading.
It was great for reading, yes. Because but for writing, our routines were all upended. Our sort of the way we keep ourselves stimulated and inspired by walking and socializing or whatever, going to town, just sitting in a nice bookshop. We couldn't do any of that. So, well, hopefully things will get back to normal.
We can hope. Yes.
I've got Kelly. She said that she's read a few of your books and really loves them, especially The Mum Who Got Her Life Back, which has been her favourite of yours so far. And she also is surprised to hear that you are Ellen Berry, as she's a huge fan of the Rosemary Lane trilogy as well.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you.
And I've got a couple of people who said, have you written a children's book?
I have. I wrote 4 children's books about, how long ago? 10 years or so ago. They're under a different name, Fiona Foden.
Okay.
Fiona Foden is they are first sort of paperbacks. They're for that sort of 9 to 12, just before young adult age.
And what sort of theme are they about?
They came about because my daughter was at that age, and we were talking a lot about the books she was reading, about coming of age, growing up, managing parents, friends, first crushes. I wrote one about somebody who lived on a narrowboat on a canal, which was based on, I lived on a boat for a couple of years in my 20s. So they were about that kind of getting to grips with relationships and identity and all that kind of thing. So I did 4 of those and really enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah. So people are wondering, are you thinking of writing any more children's books?
I don't know. I think it was very much tied into that stage of my daughter.
Yeah.
And
it sounds very much like you do write about what's happening in your stage of life as well.
Yeah. So I don't think so. There are other things I would like to write, but I'm not sure about children's books, but maybe. I don't know. I'm not in that world, and I'm not really reading them at the moment.
Yeah. And we've got a few people interested in knowing what your next book is going to be, and maybe what you're writing about at the moment.
Well, I'm just on the final edits of the next one, which is out in March. It doesn't have a title yet. My suggestion never makes it to the final cut of titles. It's always my editor and the people at Avon, my publishers. And I have to say, they're really good at titles that people tend to relate to, which is relatability is the most important thing, I think. But the story is about a flight attendant who is made redundant post-COVID because the airlines have taken a real hit. And we don't talk about COVID or anything, but it's that sort of period we're in where hopefully we're emerging from it, but she's been made redundant. And she's 50, she's never had time to date, she's been single forever, and it's the first time in her life, now she's redundant, that she's got time to get in touch with the modern world kind of thing and write a dating profile and start dating. So my title for it is Grounded, but I don't think that is going to be called Grounded.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's pretty cool. Oh, don't you hate the title thing?
But hey ho.
Yeah. Oh, that one sounds a winner too. I'll have to be onto that one when it comes out.
So that was really fun. It enabled me to quiz a lot of my friends who are dating. So I've never done that. I was like that generation way before, there were barely even computers, when I was dating. So I had a chat with a lot of friends who have got the apps and stuff and are on the dating sites and the apps and things. So it was good to get all their stories.
Yeah, I bet.
Can only imagine.
Yeah, it was fun to write, and I really wanted to write a book that was quite straightforward and really playing it for funny scenes. So it's one character's story. It's really about rediscovering herself after losing the job that she did for 30 years and loved.
And will that be out early next year, do you hope? Or?
Yeah, that's out in March, yes. And I'm about to start the next one, which will be out the year after that. And I'm just toying with the idea of kind of stepmom sort of territory. But it's really early. It's just scribbling in notebook stage and getting that beautiful whiteboard that I'm going to have with the drawings of the characters.
We can't wait to see that.
And I've got a question for you, Carly, as well, from Nola. So Nola says to you, have you ever thought about writing any children's books about the antics of all your animals?
The guinea fowl.
Yeah.
Yes, I have thought about this, but I don't think you're allowed to swear in a children's book. And when it comes to guinea fowl, that's pretty much all I do at them. So I don't know. I would have to really work on that. But yeah, no plans at the moment. Just the Facebook posts.
Yeah. And Fiona, we're wondering what you hope that readers will really love about your books.
I kind of hope that they are escapism, really, and that they are the kind of books where you just feel really a bit that warm bath feeling, that you get immersed in the kind of world of the characters, and that you are rooting for my main character, who's usually pretty flawed, pretty chaotic, a bit of a mess, So yeah, that's it, I think. I mean, they are sheer entertainment, they are. I hope they're moving as well. I mean, sometimes people say, oh, that chapter made me cry, or and I think, great, you want people to respond to them emotionally. So but sheer entertainment.
Yeah. And I have to say, from my experience of reading your books, you've certainly been able to do that.
Oh, well, I hope so.
Yeah, so certainly great.
It's funny, and obviously you want them to be funny. It is quite hard to judge whether things are funny yourself. So I think a lot of it is instinct, isn't it? You just you're writing a scene, and I think sometimes I kind of try and push it a bit. How ridiculously and funny can this be? And if it goes too ridiculous, my editor will rein me back in.
That is good. That's what they're good for.
No, reining you in.
Do you find as you're writing, do you find you test things out on people?
No, I don't really. In the early days, I would send my friend Wendy on the Isle of Wight would read chapters for me, and she was brilliant. And then the pace quickened up as I got contracts, and there was never really time to factor in people reading things, and I started to trust myself more, to be honest. What I've ended up doing actually the last 2 books, I think, because it's been quite hard to focus and concentrate in a flat full of family coming home and people around, and is I read aloud. I do sort of stick headphones on and I read it through as I'm kind of editing over what I'm doing. And then anything that stands out is boring or repetitive really jumps out if you read it out. So I kind of mutter. So I have to watch that if I'm writing in public, which obviously I've not done for quite a long time. Sitting in Starbucks or something.
There's that Fiona, the crazy writer.
Especially dialogue. I think it helps if you read it out. But I don't really test it out on. No, I guess my editor is the test, really.
And we were talking a little bit earlier about the audio books and stuff. I've only just really discovered them once mine started coming out. I'd never really done much with audio, and I do find they're a great way to just keep, especially if you're doing stuff and you want to just keep up with things. I love having the audio, and I usually buy both, so the ebook and the audio, so I can switch between them, like when I'm taking kids to school and stuff, which is also, you've got to be careful what you're listening to actually when it comes to that. But I loved it, and I did that with yours, with this last book. I found it was really lovely with the accents and things with the reading. Like it's you can have it in your own mind as you're reading, but I found it's so lovely to have that audio going too, just to help add a little bit of atmosphere.
Yeah, I was really pleased with the audio. The guy that read the male part, I actually know, and it was a complete fluke. He's an actor called Robin who lives in a town called Biggar, where I lived for 15 years. It's where we brought our family up in kind of about an hour from Edinburgh in Scotland. And he was cast as the male. He's well known anyway, but he was cast as my male part, completely fluky. And he was absolutely brilliant. So I love how they did.
Well, I love how they did that. Like, there's not often you get to have the 2 readers, like a male and a female. Yeah. That worked really well. I really loved how they did that.
Yeah. So I was thrilled that he did it. It was great. It was, I mean, I'm really good friends with his wife, who I was in a writing group with actually for 15 years or 10 years or something. So it was funny how that connection happened.
Yeah. Small world.
And Nola's wondering, talking about audiobooks, can you ever, like if you've loved one of them, can you request the same one do your next book?
I could do, yes. And I guess it depends on their availability. I mean, they are, the people who cast them tend to do a brilliant job. But yeah, I would say, oh, you know, they did a great job on the last one. Can they do the next one?
Yeah.
But then obviously it depends on where the book is set and what the accents are going to be, and you know.
Are all your books set in Scotland, or have you got them set in other?
No, they're not all. The Rosemary Lane ones were in Yorkshire. So in the north of England, where I'm from, in kind of rural Yorkshire. The early ones, some of the early ones were in London, where I lived for about 15 years. One was Edinburgh. The last couple have been Glasgow, I think. It's funny, you know, you do forget. I do forget the books. I'm kind of very much, you know, immersed in the one I'm working on or the one that I'm just finishing. Yeah, they have been, but lately they've been Scotland because I've been based here for quite a long time.
Well, don't change it. I love it that they're in Scotland.
Well, that's good. That is good to hear. Yeah, I've thought about going back to London for books, but I kind of feel it's so long since I've lived there. It's 20 years actually. You know, my sort of handle on living in London might be a little bit out of date now. Or sometimes it can be a nameless town or a kind of fictitious town, which gives you quite a lot of freedom actually.
Yes, and saves you from being sued.
It does. Or offending people, you know, if there's derogatory about something.
Yes. I'm finding it hard to come up with fictional names for towns. So at the moment, I make all mine up just about. It's getting really tricky.
It is really difficult. And I don't know how you find coming up with character names.
That's trying. I know. Now I've got to write a list out, and I'm thinking that one sounds familiar, and then I realise it's already been used. So I know it is really hard.
I know. I've actually got a book where a big notebook where I write down the main characters' names for all my books.
That's a good
kind
idea.
of theme and the kind of area it's about empty nesters, or it's about the whole dog share issue. When Life Gives You Lemons, that was about sort of life post divorce, with a kind of older friend, and so I don't kind of repeat things. As my memory gets more fuzzy with age.
Again, editors usually pick it up.
Yeah, but definitely the names are, because you use all your favourite names up, don't you? Quite quickly, actually.
I'm interested both.
You can't use.
Sorry. I'm interested both Carly and Fiona, like with names. Do you ever have friends or family who request that you put them in your books?
I've never had that, actually. I've had somebody in a very early book was a bit offended because a very unsympathetic male character was kind of based on him a bit, which I sort of did kind of accidentally. I think I'd had a person in my head to root the character. Sometimes I'll think about someone I know for real, start the character off, taking those characteristics. But by the time the book's finished, they're not recognisable, but he spotted himself. So.
Yes. I often get people asking, but you can't put your kids' names in it because it just makes it weird, especially if they're the main characters.
Yeah.
So that's the list you sort of have of names you can't use, which is really annoying.
Yes. So, no, I'm the same. I tend to avoid the names of people that I'm really close to. I think I've had a Sam, which is one of my son's names. I've not had my other son or daughter's names in. But it does get tricky after quite a lot of books, because you've got so many names in it. I mean, my books have quite a lot of characters. You've got your main little core of people, maybe say 6, and then you've got this whole cast of others that come in and out, haven't you? That are on the kind of periphery. So there's a lot of names. Yeah,
and I've learnt that you don't just give any old name to anyone, because down the track, when you want to make a book about that brother or that sister and you've given them a really stupid name, you've got to carry it on. So if there's any potential for a second book, you've got to make sure all the names are okay.
Yeah. I think you kind of know, you get a gut feeling when you've got the right name for a person, actually.
Yeah, it has to suit them.
And I've got a few people asking, like, what sort of books you like to read yourself. And I'm wondering if maybe there is something you might have read recently that you could recommend to everybody.
So I read quite a lot of, I like a lot of psychological thrillers. The last one I've just read, which I really enjoyed, I think she's brilliant, is Lisa Jewell's Invisible Girl, which she started off writing quite kind of young, flat sharey sort of books about relationships and growing up in London and that kind of thing, and then moved gradually into kind of darker territory and these thrillers, and I think she's fantastic at them. I really like them. So I've just read that. I read one called Blood Orange, and I can't remember the author's name.
I've heard of that one, but I can't.
I tore through. I like them. I find I can tear through them. They're very different to my work, my writing.
So do you try and steer clear of rom-coms?
I do like them, but I find it, if I'm really under the cosh with a deadline, I find it quite hard to read any fiction, to be honest. I just find I don't really have the headspace. I read a lot of memoirs then, which I really like. I love, back to fiction, I love David Nichols, who wrote One Day and a book called Us, and a book called Sweet Sorrow. Absolutely, he's probably my favourite, actually. I absolutely love him. He's brilliant on relationships and people. They're probably my favourites at the moment.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing those. Carly, just one, like your book was set in Scotland. Is there any burning questions you've been wanting to ask Fiona about Scotland?
I just want to go back there so badly.
Where did you go, Carly?
Well,
Where
actually,
did you go?
we didn't do Glasgow, and I'm really sad we didn't go down that way. We did pretty much up and across, but not right up to the very top. But yeah, it's just a matter of cramming everything into our 16 whole days. So
Wow.
we're going to go, yeah, we're going to go back and do another like 3 months or something, so we can actually, you know, see a lot more without rushing so much. But it is amazing what you can cram in when you have to, because you just got to see it all. But loved Edinburgh. I'm not a city person at all. I cannot stand cities, but there was just something magical about that city. It was just amazing. Loved it. Yeah. So, and just actually the whole of Scotland was just amazing. It's just so old. We don't have that really here. And I think, I don't know whether you guys take that for granted. Like, I just can't even imagine living there and walking past these places every day, these old churches and ruins and castles. And it's just amazing. Yeah. We just
I know. I really, really love it, actually. I'm actually a city person. I love living in a city. I really missed London for a long time after we left it. And I love Glasgow. It's really vibrant and there's so much going on. And it's a very scalable city, actually. It's really easy to get around, very, very friendly. But I absolutely love getting out. As I've got older, I've really started to love getting out in the wilds. And since we haven't been able to go overseas anywhere, actually, we've ended up going to a lot more places in Scotland, up to the northeast, which is stunning on the northeast coast, up to Orkney, so right to the very north. And there's your cat.
There's my cat. It tends to make
me up to the north coast, and then up to Orkney, which is an hour by ferry, which was just stunning. The west coast, I love the islands off the west coast. And obviously that's all more rugged and rocky, and you know, it's the classics of Highland, you know. It's gorgeous.
You just can't, and even looking back at the photos, they just don't do it justice. And the photos are gorgeous, but you just think, oh my goodness, it was just so hard to believe how beautiful a country can be.
Yeah, it's great. It's lovely, and it's good for your head, I think, getting out, you know, getting in the wild. I love Loch Fyne is really lovely, and it's also, Glasgow's a very easy city to get out of. So you can get to Loch Fyne, which feels really like another planet, to be honest, in about 2 hours easily, you know. So it's kind of very accessible.
That was what we sort of found interesting about it. It's not a big place, I guess, maybe just in terms of where we live, but so many people that live there don't tend to go very far. A lot of people hadn't been to Skye, and it's only a couple of hours away, but we found that really interesting that, I don't know. That was, I guess it's just where you live and where, I guess we live in places and don't take advantage of some of the stuff we live in too. But that just made us sort of chuckle when we sort of heard that. But
Mary Lou's wondering if it's true that you can see the Northern Lights from the top of Scotland.
You can. I never have, though. I haven't. Yeah, you can definitely from the north, and certainly from up in Orkney and up there, you can do. But I've not been that lucky, unfortunately.
And have you ever visited Australia?
I have been twice, and I absolutely loved Sydney so much. I've got obsessed with it, actually. In fact, I had a bit of a plan to move because a friend of mine was had some magazines there that I knew from London. But then other events took over and it didn't happen. Yeah, I've been to Sydney, Melbourne. I've been to New Zealand too, which I really loved. I went skiing there and on a crazy jet boat ride, which was terrifying, and whitewater rafting.
Yeah, sounds like Queenstown.
It was Queenstown. It was fabulous.
Yeah,
that's about 30 years ago, though. But I loved Sydney. I found it super friendly. I've still got a lot of friends there, actually.
Yeah. Well, I hope that you're able to come over again sometime, and
I
I
hope
really hope
so.
that we're able to come and visit Scotland. I've have
Yeah.
only visited Scotland when I was 4. My grandfather was from Dunoon.
Oh, wow, really? Yeah, I
Yeah.
know Dunoon.
Yeah.
I know Dunoon really
So
well,
I really
actually.
hope I can go there again another time.
Yeah, it's a really lovely town. Yeah, so you just get the ferry over the Clyde and then to Dunoon and then over to Loch Fyne. So it's really nice part of the world.
Well, thanks so much for talking to us. I've really enjoyed talking to us, and thanks, Carly, for joining in too. It's been great chatting together.
It has.
Thanks a lot. It was lovely talking to you.
And thanks everyone who joined in, and some great questions that people asked. Just wondering before we finish, Fiona, do you want to let people know how they can keep in touch with you?
Yes, my website is FionaGibson.com, and I'm on Facebook, which is really easy, just Fiona Gibson Author. And I'm also on Instagram, which is Fiona_Gib. And I'm a bit obsessed with social media, so it's such a time sucker, isn't it? But I'm kind of quite active on it, so it would be lovely if you could follow me on there.
Yep, and totally recommend your books to everyone who wants something to take them away. And also don't forget Carly's new book as well, Take Me Home, which is great for getting away from things as well.
Thank you.
So thanks everybody, and thanks so much, Carly and Fiona. Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye.